So it is estimated that nearly 100 million people in the US alone suffer from allergies each year. And it's such a common diagnosis that really I feel like everyone just accepts this as normal and part of what we all have to deal with. But have you ever wondered why some people suffer, but others don't seem to be bothered at all? Is it possible that so many people seem to suffer from allergies because it actually has such a common emotional driver? Welcome back to the Mind Change Podcast. I'm your host, Heather McKean, and today we are covering the emotional drivers behind seasonal allergies. So this could also cover what might be known as hay fever, pollen allergy, tree or grass allergies, all of those fun things. So it is estimated that nearly 100 million people in the US alone suffer from allergies each year. Where I am currently living, there are entire seasons dedicated to this topic. And it's such a common diagnosis that really I feel like everyone just accepts this as normal and part of what we all have to deal with. But have you ever wondered why some people suffer, but others don't seem to be bothered at all? Is it possible that so many people seem to suffer from allergies because it actually has such a common emotional driver? All right, so one of the most basic drivers behind allergies is represented by an overwhelmed soul, or being overwhelmed at like a core level. Another thing is a lack of nurturing, attention, or acceptance to any degree in our development, and that can actually wire us to operate in a deficit moving forward into our adult life. So that means that children who experienced any of those things, so neglect, abandonment, a lack of nurturing, a lack of attention, lack of acceptance, even feeling different, left out, picked on, bullied, or that your acceptance was based on performance, if any of those happened in early years, then that kind of sets us up to be under-equipped to deal with adult stresses and responsibilities. So if you couple that with an absolute insane amount of stimuli that we encounter today, is it any wonder that people feel allergic to the very environment that we live in? So we aren't allergic, possibly, right, to what's in the air. Maybe we're actually allergic to the sheer amount of stress and responsibility thrust upon us daily. We're expected to give so much each day without being filled up ourselves. So for many of us, this was modeled for us by our own parents or caregivers. That feeling that we need to just give and give and give, regardless of what it does to us. Right? Trying to pour from the proverbial empty cup. So this is one of the most basic drivers for allergies as a whole. But things get a lot more interesting as we begin to understand all the individual allergy potentials there are. Because really for each allergen, there are particular messages that are held within. It's really fascinating, and we do not have the time to be doing that now. But in this particular episode, we're just going to cover some of the basic contributing drivers for seasonal allergies. Remember, it's likely that not all of these will resonate, and there are multiple options for emotional drivers. But the goal here is to see if anything sparks a deeper connection. Now, think about this on this level too, because I think we've become so accustomed to just being like, well, come on, there's pollen and there's all these things outside. But we spend an infinitely smaller amount of time outside than our forefathers, than the people that have come before us. The people before us engaged with the outdoors so much more than we do as a whole now. And yet, allergies are more and more and more common. So think about that. I mean, we've got to take that and see that there must be some other component that we've maybe not addressed or not thought about, right? How many people do you know today that are farmers? And frankly, I grew up with farmers. I hardly ever heard about farmers having seasonal allergies, right? So I think that that's something for us to think about and consider as we address these common emotional drivers that we're about to talk about. Okay, so some of the drivers behind seasonal allergies are repressed or suppressed grief that's not been acknowledged or dealt with. Okay, so I don't know about you, but I know a lot of people who are dealing with that. So suppressed grief, not been acknowledged or dealt with. Another one is you may have grown up in a family where you felt controlled or dominated. Another one, you may have had a parent who focused a lot of their energy on keeping the other parent happy to avoid angry outbursts, which led to unintentional neglect of the child. So, I mean, this is one of those things when we talk about neglect being a driver here. I mean, some people will go back to, no, but I wasn't neglected. And we're thinking about neglect on these like really extreme levels of not having food or not having, proper clothing or care or something. But neglect, the way our body can perceive neglect as a child, was that we just didn't get enough attention from a parent. So if you had a parent, a particular parent, who doing the best that they could, was given over to maybe angry outbursts or, was fragile in their ability to stay calm or patient. So if you had let's just say a father who you had to walk, like the whole family had to walk on eggshells around, right? Like, don't make dad mad. Don't stress dad out. Dad had a hard day at work, so don't make it any worse. And then maybe your mother in particular was actually the leader of the eggshell walking. She was very careful to keep this framework around dad very, very close and very careful. Like, as a child, you may have sort of understood that, but if the amount of energy through the day that mom has to offer is going toward let's not make dad mad or let's be really careful around dad, and your needs are met maybe on a quieter level or, a more secretive level, that communicates something to us as children. So our parents doing the best that they can may still be communicating to our bodies. It may be received at least as neglect. Okay, and obviously that can go both ways. Maybe a mother who was chronically ill or who had a fragile disposition in the sense of a nervous condition, anxiety, and maybe dad was the one that a lot of dad's energy went to making sure mom was okay. Let's not worry mom. Let's not, dysregulate mom. And a lot of that energy, was you were craving and wanting to go to you or needed to go to you. Again, you may not have been conscious of this. And we're not looking to blame parents or to go back and be like, yeah, oh wait, I guess I was neglected. No, it isn't that. We don't want it to become part of the story, but sometimes we need that at least seen and witnessed and acknowledged so that we can move forward. So, I don't know, big surprise there. That is one of the primary drivers behind seasonal allergies. Okay, another one. So you frequently felt overwhelmed by big feelings and emotions that you felt powerless to change. So if you grew up in a home where, don't get angry or don't, I'll give you something to cry about or something where big feelings weren't even modeled on how to deal with, then that can be something that you felt like you needed to kind of stuff. stuffy. It's all very metaphoric. Another one could be the emotional environment that you grew up in could make it hard to learn how to relax. So when to stress, when do we stress, and when do we relax? So if your parents were a bit dysregulated with that, your system as a child could get dysregulated. Like, is it time? Is it safe? Is it good? And that can cause some underpinnings for seasonal allergies. So another thing is you may have had a difficult time manifesting good in your life, and you often feel trapped. That can come sometimes from this idea of, like, oh, don't get too big for your britches. Don't get prideful. Other people have it really hard, so you don't want people to know how good your life is. Sometimes that gets communicated from adults to children, and then we again stuff even good feelings or the things that we think could be good, and we don't want to offend, so we're stuffing those things in. Another component is that you may have felt attacked, threatened, or invaded emotionally, and you tend to play out those scenarios in your mind a lot. So if boundaries were a bit of an issue for you, not modeled, not taught, or not done healthy, you can tend to have a lot of feel like you have to be really careful about what you let into your life. It may be that you have difficulty creating and maintaining boundaries unless someone makes you angry. So that's another thing of you'll just let things pass until you finally become angry. And it's the anger that becomes the boundary, right? And so we end up with this really interesting relationship with anger where we were taught that it was not good, but it has become proof of one of the only things that actually protects us. And we have this kind of love-hate back forth relationship with anger, which anger is a very healthy emotion if it's witnessed and processed and then let go of, and then we can move out of wisdom rather than anger. Another possible driver is you have a difficult time being transparent or vulnerable because you fear that you may be rejected or judged. Oftentimes we can find proof of that in our childhood. So another thing is if you frequently feel irritated, right? You're irritated by people, by life, by your job. That irritation can be, again, metaphoric for the things in our environment are irritating us. Another possible one is you may be in a relationship with someone or in an environment that feels invasive or offensive. This can be in a relationship like a marriage relationship. It could be in a work environment, a church environment. And the allergies that we're doing are really just trying to tell us that there's something in our environment that's bothering us. So through the allergies, the body is trying to let us know that something out there feels threatening to something in here. So there's irritations or irritants that are stirring up old feelings, old stories and emotions that we don't actually want to consciously be reminded of. And oftentimes because we don't want to get angry or aggressive, the boundary becomes our body. And we begin to stuff those things. So our eyes can water because they don't want to see. And if we create enough symptoms, people might actually keep their distance from us because we start to look all puffy and snotty and sneezy. And that actually makes us more safe. If we think people or situations or environments could be dangerous, our body will actually manifest us being symptomatic because it's kind of in our nature to feel ooh, stay away. Are you contagious? Right? I know after COVID, when people were still doing allergies and doing them even more extremely, which, hello, we weren't outside for so long. Why are we so even more allergenic to things? The common thing we would hear is no, I'm not sick. I don't have COVID. I just have allergies. Right? And people's faces are just, their eyes are watering, their nose is stuffy, and their cheeks are splotchy and everything. So it is one of the ways our body is actually trying to keep us safe if we believe or perceive people or our environment or something out there to be a threat to something inside of our own mind or body. So I don't know what you think about all of that, but it makes me think that our bodies are actually so amazing. With mind change, it's important to remember that we never want to remove a coping mechanism that's effectively helping someone deal with what they're carrying subconsciously. But the better option is to remove the irritating or offending thoughts, memories, beliefs, and experiences. Because then our filters change and our perception expands. And then the world seems less dangerous and toxic. And then our vision can clear. And then we can breathe deeply of all the good things that we are now seeing and feeling and that were always there, but we're just now becoming more aware of. So as a reminder, the emotional drivers in infants and children are often very different than adults. So if you've got a little infant or a baby that's suffering what has been said is seasonal allergies, then these may not all line up, okay? So I'll only be covering adult emotional drivers in this series. So please know that they will rarely apply in the case of young children and infants. Okay, so that about wraps up our seasonal allergy emotional drivers episode. I look forward to seeing you every other week as we dive into this fascinating topic. Please make sure to keep leaving those 5-star reviews and then comment if there's a disease or symptom or ailment you would like to see us or hear us cover in this podcast. Until next time, thank you for joining us on the Mind Change podcast, where we are changing the world one mind at a time.